Those who are sincerely seeking to debate and learn will learn and follow and change. Those who are there for fight, for the sake of fighting, you can never do anything for them. That is given through the manifestations to us. That's what conquers our hearts. And through that same word, then we conquers others' hearts, right? Elsewhere, this issue is dealt with in the writing that every manifestations, every message comes for the whole of humanity. The very first commandment was which tree to eat from and which tree to not eat from. My chapter of the faith should live forever. Nothing else is coming up after that. Story of Adam and Eve repeated over and over and over and over again, right? Paragraph 12.
And when his day was ended, there came the turn of Moses.
And whose day was ended?
Abraham's, I think,
Abraham.
right?
Wonderful, yes.
Yeah. Armed with a rod of celestial.
Now let's pause a little bit. Baha'u'llah is talking about the main manifestations that are changing, if you notice, changing the laws of God, meaning that a new cycle is starting. Not cycle as Adamic cycle, but a new cycle within the cycle of the law is starting within these manifestations. Because after Abraham, right away was not Moses, right? So we need to keep in mind when you read the text, then after Abraham was two of his sons were prophets, and his sons were prophets. There had been several prophets actually, right? Joseph was before Moses. So it is in Joseph's time when the Jews would become residents of Israel, and some generations later will become slaves in there. And then Moses happens and Moses frees them, right? So, all right, go on. So when he says when his days are ended, read it in that connotation, not that Moses happened immediately after Abraham. Go on.
Armed with the rod of celestial dominion.
Armed with the rod of celestial dominion, adorned with the white hand of divine knowledge.
And proceeding from the Quran of the love of God.
Quran of the love of God, and wielding the serpent of power and everlasting majesty. All of these are keys.
He shone forth from the Sinai of light upon the world.
Light upon the world.
He summoned all the peoples and kindreds of the earth.
All the people, underline that, and kindreds of the earth.
To the kingdom of eternity. And invited them to partake of the fruit of the tree of faithfulness.
The tree of faithfulness.
Surely you are aware of the fierce opposition of Pharaoh and his people, and of the stones of idle fancy which the hands of infidels cast upon that blessed tree. So much so that Pharaoh and his people finally arose and exerted their utmost endeavor to extinguish with the waters of falsehood and denial the fire of that sacred tree. Oblivious of the truth that no earthly water can quench the flame of divine wisdom, nor mortal blast extinguish the lamp of everlasting dominion. Nay, rather, such water cannot
but intensify the burning of the flame.
And such blast cannot but ensure the preservation of the lamp.
Ensure the preservation of the lamp.
Were ye to observe with the eye of discernment and walk in the way of God's holy will and pleasure, how well hath a believer of the kindred of Pharaoh, whose story is recounted by the all glorious in his book, revealed unto his beloved one, observed. And a man of the family of Pharaoh, who was a believer and concealed his faith, said, Will ye slay a man?
Will he slay a man because he saith, My Lord is God?
When he hath already come to you with signs from your Lord? If he be a liar, on him will be his lie. But if he be a man of truth, part of what he threateneth will fall upon you.
In truth, God guideth not him who is a transgressor, a liar.
Finally, so great was their iniquity that this self-same believer was put to a shameful death. The curse of God be upon the people of tyranny.
So would you like to tell us what Moses' miracles were and how Baha'u'llah is unraveling for what they actually meant? Moses had some very famous miracles, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you like to go through them or you want me to?
Yeah, yes. The opening the red, allowing the people to cross the Red Sea.
That is one of them. It's definitely mentioned.
The miracles of the plagues of Egypt, the 10 plagues.
Those are not quite mentioned here yet.
Causing water to come out of the rock.
That is one of the miracle. It hasn't
causing quail to appear, causing manna out of heaven.
That's not been mentioned in this paragraph yet.
What else? Those are good ones for the time being.
Brad, would you? Armed with a rod of celestial dominion. Which miracle this is unraveling?
Well, that would be authority.
Yes, but what was the miracle of Moses that were literally translated until Baha'u'llah says this, right? That's what I mean, keys,
right.
because these miracles have been translated literally over the centuries
Right.
and thousands of years, and people of science discard them because they sound rather not really reasonable when you translate them literally. So what was the miracle? The miracle of Moses was one of the miracles, two miracles he got when he, well, the burning bush already was a miracle in itself, right? When he came upon the burning bush. And Baha'u'llah says what? That was the light of the love of God that he saw. So that would be his inclination, his intimation to his mission, so to speak. And at that moment, Moses was given, anybody remembers the paragraph from the Torah? When he saw the light, he told his family was with him, and he says, you sit in here and I'll go see if there might be some tribe or some Bedouin, because they were all, he was in the Sinai, traveling with his wife and children. And so he goes up, there is this bush that is burning and the sound comes out of it. And what was the first command that was given by that voice to Moses? And to this day, because of that, I have to take my shoes off to pray, because the sound said, take thy shoes off, O Moses, thou art on holy ground. All right, thou art on holy ground. So he takes his shoes off, he's very frightened, and he's told, I'm paraphrasing now, the voice comforts him and tells him not to be frightened, and tells him that this is his God, and he's commanding him to guide his people. And there is a conversation. Moses then asks about, because he's asked immediately that he needs to go back to Pharaoh, where he ran away from, where they wanted to put him to death, around 7 years prior to this, or longer, actually, almost 10 years at this point. And he's frightened about this commission. And he is a shepherd. He has no, I mean, he has no weaponry, no nothing. He's a stutterer too. And that there is a story about that, why Moses was a stutterer. So God says, don't be afraid. I am with thee all the time. What does Baha'u'llah often says? Don't be afraid. Go out and teach the world. I am with thee all the time, right? God is with us all the time. So he was asked to, as a shepherd, every shepherd would hold a stick, a long kind of rod type of stick in their hand to herd the sheep, right? So he was asked to throw that stick that was in hand on the ground, and he does. And when the stick touches the ground, it becomes a big, huge snake, right? And Moses is afraid, and the voice of God says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Go and grab it. Go and take it back. And he doesn't want to touch it. And he says, it will not harm thee. Go and grab it. And then Moses, as soon as Moses grabs that big snake, it becomes a stick again in his hand. That was first miracle after the burning bush. And then God says, put thy hand into thy bosom, like in your pocket, actually inside your shirt. So he does. And he says, now draw it out. And he draws it out, and it's shining like the sun, and it frightens him, right? And so God says, now with these two signs of God, go and conquer Pharaoh, right? Go and conquer Pharaoh. The rod of celestial dominion, adorned with the white hand of knowledge. What is it that conquers the world? Knowledge, truth, not these days we manipulate the words so much that it's actually one has to dissect the words all the time to get to the truth, because counting 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pencils is one type of knowledge. And having the knowledge and truth, which is logical, rational, spiritual, and physical, that's what conquers the world against the falsehood, right? Every time a manifestation comes, the higher knowledge of God that is given through the manifestations to us, that's what conquers our hearts. And through that same word, then we conquers others' hearts, right? Because over the centuries, why the first requirement was detachment? Because over the centuries, we put so much bundles and mounds of dust onto the previous knowledge that was given to us. That's one reason we are lost. The other reason we are lost is that some of the knowledge doesn't work anymore, meaning the law side of things, because we have grown up, we have evolved. So not everything is manipulated over the time, but a lot of truth is manipulated over time. So when these two things happen, that now I'm 5 years old and I'm not 2 years old anymore, I knew new regulations, previous one don't work for me. And then there is slew of people who are telling me all sorts of things, what these things mean, and they don't mean that. When that accumulate, these two issues, when they accumulate over the centuries, that's when the populations and our hearts and souls are lost. And when our heart and souls are lost and these things don't make sense, guess what we do? We blame God for it and we walk away from him, right? From time immemorial to time immemorial, that's what human beings have done. We don't sit back and say, maybe I misunderstand that. Maybe I should get back to the book. We don't do that. After a few generations of whatever accumulated knowledge is, people get stuck into their whatever they have taught and learned, and they don't individually learn to go back to the book. Once in a while, people do, and when they stand up and say, hey, what are you doing? We put them to death too, right? We say, what the hell? Do you think you know better? We don't listen to them, because my other 100 scholars have taught me this other thing, and even though it doesn't make sense and my life doesn't work, but I'm not going to listen to you, so to speak. And those issues would be talked here as well. So white hand of knowledge. It wasn't just a physical hand that shone like a sun, right? Proceeding from the Faran of the love of God. Love of God, that's your burning bush. Love, the more you give, the more it becomes. We know this. We know this from even our human side of love. The more you love, the more you give, the more intense it becomes. It doesn't dwindle. It's not as giving love is not a zero-sum game that I only have this much portion, and if I give to this person, then and we often see it that way, and that's why we are hindered from loving more. But the more you love, the more it grows. The fierceness of its heat grows, actually. Wielding the serpent of power and everlasting majesty, right? So now equate that miracle when Moses does go to the court, and 400, 300, 400, some magicians are called, right? That's how we read the story literally. Magicians are called. Those are religious leaders of the time, by the way. They're called to debate Moses because Pharaoh refuses that God is now this, God is saying this. And so when he debates with them, he wins, his truth wins. And those 400 people became believers, remember, from the Torah. They prostrated to the God of Moses, right? But what happened initially? They asked each other who wants to go first, and Moses said, "You go first," right? So they threw their snakes, the Bible says, and now Pharaoh is presiding over this thing, and they threw their snakes, and then Moses threw his staff that became a snake and ate all their snakes. Truth is one, not 400. Right? 400 snakes were thrown on the floor, and one truth, that is one God, conquered it, conquered all of them. There's one staff in Moses' hand. He has the absolute truth, right? He has the absolute truth. And when absolute truth is put forward, those who are sincerely seeking to debate and learn will learn and follow and change. Those who are there for the sake of fighting, you can never do anything for them, right? So see how beautiful that was, but we literally translated that as if this was snake eating snake, and the modern mind goes like, what the hell are you talking about, right? So then those 400 prostrated and they said they believe in the God of Moses. And then Pharaoh threatened them. Pharaoh said that if you don't recant, I will cut your hand and legs on the alternate side. That was the punishment for the blasphemy or whatever at that time. And they said, whatever you do, you can put us to death, but once we have seen the truth, we cannot turn away from it, right? So that's the story of those miracles. Why I said underline all the peoples and kindreds of the earth. This is Baha'u'llah elsewhere says, people have what? I love that verse. It says, people have indulged, I'm paraphrasing, not the right words, but indulged in these spacious discourses all the time without knowing what the hell they're talking about, right? So to speak. And this is one of them. I've traveled around the globe, and almost every people of every kind and religion, or chapter of religion, I call them, would say that, oh, this thing was just for them and not for anybody else. So Moses came for the Israelites, Christ came for the Jews, Muhammad came for the Arabs only, and if they went out and taught anywhere else, they were wrong, so forth and so on. And here's your rebuttal to that. He summoned all the peoples and kindreds of the earth, of the whole globe. Elsewhere, this issue is dealt with in the writings, that every manifestations, every message comes for the whole of humanity. Lots of them don't go to it and don't come to it. That's on us. That's our fault. But God has sent every message to everyone. Fruit of the tree of faithfulness. This fruit and tree will show up often in the writings. And you know, that was the beginning of our life with Adam and Eve. The very first commandment was which tree to eat from and which tree to not eat from. And so you can dissect it all the time when the tree is being called for. Eat from the tree of positive knowledge and not negative knowledge. Eat from the tree of faithfulness and not unfaithfulness. Eat from the tree of truth and not falsehood, and so forth and so on, right? Eat from the tree that God has granted you, meaning that the life-giving food that God has granted you, not your own stuff, not the other stuff that God forbids you. When you do that, then you will die. But, right, so Bible says Satan told them, no, it's the opposite. If you eat of this, you will live forever. Guess what every community has done? We will want to live forever, and that's why we don't want to come to the next manifestation. My chapter of the faith should live forever. Nothing else is coming up after that. Story of Adam and Eve repeated over and over and over and over again, right? So we don't eat from what God gives, and we eat from everything else. And that makes us fall down. Waters of falsehood, parting of the sea, right? Dave, you had mentioned that one. Parting of the sea is parting of the falsehood. He saved them. Moses saved the Israelites from the falsehood of Pharaoh. And water cannot but intensify the burning of the flame, ensure the preservation of the lamp. Elsewhere, the Guardian touches on this principle, and he says, don't be afraid of persecution. And again, I'm paraphrasing. And he says, persecution but intensifies the flame of truth. And it's very true. Quickly, one of the, Baha'u'llah had 19 apostles. One of them, Mirza Haider Ali, he was the son of one of the worst type of enemies, covenant-breaking type of enemies from the previous community. And he was son of one of those guys who was like immortal enemy of Baha'u'llah and the faith. And he was barely early teenager when he came across a scene where few of the Babis were nailed upside down to a tree. They were alive, and people were stoning them and throwing whatever else they could, and they were put to death that way. And there were crowd gathered around it, and people were jeering at them. And he didn't know what was going on, so he stopped a person when he saw that horrible sign, and he asked them, what have they done to deserve such a punishment? And the guy just shrugged his shoulders sort of by the way and said, they're Babis. And he was like, but I mean, okay, what have they done to deserve this? And the guy was so surprised. He looked back at him and he says, what do you mean? I'm like, as if they didn't need to do anything else. So in the crowd's mind, it was enough that they were Babis. That put him on to the investigation of what is it. And he said these that were put to death that way, had not a single complaint or scream coming out of their mouths, as if nothing was happening to them, and they bore that in absolute silence. And every time the Persians were torturing to death the believers, there was only one thing they needed to do to relieve themselves of some torture and death, and they were asked all the time to recant their faith. If they recant their faith, we'll let you go. We would even give you more wealth and other things, and these people would refuse. Right? 400 those religious leaders who said, once we know the truth, we cannot go back on it. Once you know the truth, and we talked about a little bit what real belief means. Once we know the truth, you cannot go back on it. So, will he slay a man because he saith, my Lord is God? He's saying this to the people of Pharaoh. So we call them by non-believers, by polytheists, by this, that, or the other, of the sun worship. But this sentence alone, and Torah is witness to this. Those guys did have a faith that was in its fallen state at the time the Moses comes. And if you look at historically, the people of the world, that's how it is. Every manifestation comes to a previously fallen community of faith. So there was a time that they did believe in one God, that they did believe in monotheism, right? So you often would think that we are not idol worshippers, but we are very much idol worshippers right now too. We just don't make statues. We worship our ideas, we worship our desires, we worship our community, we worship our culture, we worship many other things that we have created around that. And those things have higher value to us than the word of God. Then that's any place when anything has a higher value than God, then you're worshiping something else. Then that's idol worship, right? So this believer was telling them that if the person says, my Lord is God, one God is our God, what is wrong about it that you are torturing them or killing them? In truth, God guideth not him who is a transgressor, a liar. And that is absolutely true. Absolutely true. You will see that in common life as well. The truly spiritual ones are good souls. All right. Anything else that I might? There is a lot more here, by the way, but some of them, when you read it on your own, you will catch those.